When Ivy realized that Denali was capable of breaking the ropes that were holding the two of them with just her own hands, the admiration that she was having for this lady increased. Initially, she did not really know about the power level that Denali possessed. But nevertheless, the information that she had received from Samantha was that Samantha was the weakest amongst the entire group. Since that was the case, that implied that Denali was stronger than she was. And Samantha on the other hand was already a 7-star ordinary human. Since Denali was stronger than she was, that implied that Denali had to be at least an 8-star ordinary human. Denali did not say anything, but just completed breaking the ropes, releasing the two. After that, she turned around and looked at Antonio. To say the truth, she was not someone who really cared much about others other than Jack and Celine, considering that the two of them were the ones that she deemed very important. If it was normal, she would not have really cared about Antonio, and she would have just released the two of them, beaten this guy a little bit, before letting him go. But since they were leaving this place, that implied that Antonio would have definitely gone after Ivy and Daniel later on. Of course, she herself did not know the reason why the two of them were being held captive here. But that was not something that she concerned herself about. Right now, she had decided that she was going to deal with this guy. At the end of the day, this was not the first time that he had caused trouble for them. Although something like this was something that she could ignore, but right now, due to the impression that she had developed for Ivy ever since from the start, she could not leave her just like that. She remembered the time that she was in the Shadow Organization. At that time, she was training, and she was receiving a lot of resources. But due to that, she had attracted a lot of hatred from others. Nevertheless, she did not care, and just continuously trained. She herself possessed a heroic spirit, and she was someone who liked to get stronger. And other than the fact that she was a prodigy when it came to learning fighting moves, she was also smart, and that was the reason why she was able to learn several business management skills. So, when she saw a lady like Ivy, a lady who was quite young, maybe in her mid-20s, who had decided to join the mercenary group, that gave her the impression of the time that she was still within the Shadow Organization, where she had gotten the name Althea. Without giving Antonio a chance of saying anything, she struck with her fist. Antonio, who had not recovered, did not have a chance of resisting a superhuman like Denali. At the end of the day, Denali was at the 9th stage of the superhuman level. Boom! Antonio's chest collapsed inwards. His ribs were easily broken, and the bones shattered his heart and lungs. As his eyes widened both in disbelief, and the pressure that was being exerted on his chest, he smashed onto the wall behind him before collapsing onto the ground. Blood began coming out of the wound that had opened up on his chest, while his other 7 orifices began bleeding as well. Antonio had died a very quick death. He was not given a chance of saying anything before he died. Well, it was quite good considering that if Denali had actually known that this person was planning something against Jack, she would have definitely given him a cruel death. The sudden change surprised everyone in the room. Not only the old man and his son, but even Ivy and Daniel were actually surprised that Antonio was dealt with just like that. Ivy's eyes shone with excitement as she looked at Denali. She had expected that Denali was strong, but she had not expected that she was going to be capable of taking care of Antonio with just a single move. And from the way that she was standing, it was clear that she did not even put much effort in the attack. As for the old man and his son, other than the surprise, the two of them felt excited. For the old man, although he had allowed Denali to come over, he was just gambling, trying to see if Denali was actually capable of dealing with this person. The two of them were already enemies, considering that the people that she was looking for were the ones that Antonio was holding captive inside this place. But now, looking at the dead body that belonged to Antonio, he could not help but feel that he was lucky that he did not block this lady. Otherwise, he might not have even known how he had died, and other than that, he felt excited considering that finally, the trouble that they were having had already been taken care of. Denali on the other hand looked at Ivy and said, "I came here to inform you that we are leaving. And other than that, I wanted to bring you something." As she said those words, she took out a small bottle that contained several pills within it. Then, she handed them over to Ivy. Ivy took the bottle as she looked at it curiously. She was not sure what he was contained within this bottle, but she was sure that it was definitely something of great value. "What is this?" Ivy asked curiously as she began opening the lid of the small bottle, before getting the smell that was coming from the small pale blue pills. "Those will be able to enable you to get stronger. In case you are able to reach the superhuman level, you'll be able to get to a big stronghold. And if you want to get to a big stronghold, and you want to meet up with us, you can come to the Devon stronghold," Denali stated. Immediately after that, she turned around, intending to leave. "Wait up!" Ivy shouted. She had not expected that Denali was going to hurt her something like this, something that was capable of improving her strength. At the same time, she was surprised by the information that Denali and the rest of the group were about to leave this stronghold. "What is it?" Denali turned around and asked with raised brows. "You are really leaving? Why don't you leave next month? At that time, I'm pretty sure that I'll be able to reach a high level. Maybe I can join your team," Ivy asked with hope in her eyes. The thing that she really wanted was to get stronger. And inside the entire stronghold domain, the only connection that she possessed was definitely Jack and his group. But nevertheless, the connection was not that strong, so she was not really sure if this was going to work. "My boss has something to take care of. So, we are going to leave today. Nevertheless, I have already told you where we're going. If you use those pills well, and train hard, you will definitely be able to reach the superhuman level," Denali responded. While leaving behind the surprised Ivy, she left this place, going back to the building. She had to complete the preparations that needed to be taken care of before the group left. Inside the store, the old man looked at Denali leaving, and he could not help but feel grateful. In fact, the moment that Antonio was taken care of, the old man was thinking about handing over the store to Denali. But when she mentioned something about the superhuman level, he immediately gave up on something like that. He could still remember that previously, he had refused to rent this store to them. At that time, it was not that he did not want to do that considering that the price that Samantha and Denali were offering was quite good. It was just that at that time, he was being controlled by Antonio, something that prevented him from selling this store. And right now, it turned out that just as Samantha and Denali had said back then, they wanted to run a store for fun. Denali's ability to kill Antonio was something that told him that she was definitely a superhuman, especially after she mentioned something about becoming a superhuman, before going after them. Unlike Ivy and Daniel, the old man knew about the position that Antonio held. And he knew just how strong this person was. Although currently he was injured, but being able to kill him with just a single move, that was definitely not something that an ordinary human could do. "Young lady, what do you think about taking this store over, with everything that is within it? Everything is free," the old man stated with a smile as he looked at Ivy. Ivy was not the only person that was surprised by the old man's offer. Even his son was not expecting that his father was going to say something like that. But he did not say anything considering that he knew his father all too well. Since his father had said something like this, that implied that he meant what he had said. And no matter what he was going to say, it was not as if he was going to change his mind. Sure. We are definitely taking it." Without waiting for Ivy to say something, Daniel immediately agreed to that. Why would he refuse to take something like this, something that was going to be a source of income for them? When Daniel agreed to this, Ivy decided that they were going to take over the store. As for the reason why the old man was handing over the store to her, she did not really care much about it. In any case, according to what she knew, according to what she had seen, she could tell that the old man was doing what Antonio was instructing him to do against his own will. Before leaving this stronghold, Jack decided that he was going to send someone back to the normal world. There was still something that he needed to take care of, considering that he had already been away for about 2 weeks now. He did not know what was ongoing in the normal world currently considering that there was no connection between the normal world and the stronghold domain. So, other than the fact that he wanted to complete his end of the contract with the Shadow Organization, there was also a part that he wanted to deliver a few things to Jonathan and Celine's parents. Of course he wanted them to get stronger. He did not want them to be vulnerable. So, it was better if they got stronger, strong enough to be able to protect themselves, rather than just depending on others. When they left, they did not leave anyone behind that was going to be able to protect them. They depended on the security company for many things, but they themselves were also kind of strong, though not strong enough if compared to the people in the stronghold domain. Since he was going with everyone to the Devon stronghold, he decided to send one of the puppets. And of course, this puppet was going to be at the superhuman level, the 6th stage of the superhuman level. Other than going there to provide the resources that he wanted them to be delivered to the Shadow Organization, he also wanted this puppet to remain outside so that it could protect Celine's parents. As for Jonathan, that guy did not have enemies that came from the stronghold domain. Additionally, the Jezda family also possessed some kind of connection with the stronghold domain. Jack himself was not sure about which kind of connection Benjamin was talking about, but nevertheless, it existed. This puppet was not only going to act as a measure of protection that was going to ensure the safety of Celine's parents, but it was also going to be a method that he was going to be able to communicate with the people in the normal world. For the puppet to be able to get out of this place, it was not that much difficult. With the power level that the puppet possessed, there was nobody that was capable of preventing her from getting out of the stronghold domain. Additionally, the puppet was going to use the entrance that Jack and his group had used to enter this place. That place did not have even a single superhuman watching over it. As for the identity that was required, that was only something that was required for those that were coming inside of the stronghold domain. As for exiting the domain, the user ID was not that much important. But of course, it seemed that there was a method that the stronghold domain was capable of monitoring the movements of those that had gone out of the stronghold domain. Otherwise, if the people from the stronghold domain were actually allowed to easily go out of the stronghold domain into the normal world would have definitely been in chaos right now. Jack and his group had already prepared themselves. They did not have many things to carry, considering that Jack did not really need to carry the items and the equipment that were here. Instead, he could still gain them using the system after getting to the big stronghold, and of course, he was sure that he was going to be able to get higher level ones. So, the luggage that the group possessed was not that much. After they got into the vehicle that Jack had gotten from the system, something that he had improved a little bit, they set off. It was Jack, Celine, Denali, Samantha, and finally Sylvia. Of course there was Johnson, but Jack had decided not to come over with him right now, but instead, he had told him that he was going to have him join them in the Devon stronghold in less than a month. Since it was just a month, Johnson decided to wait. At the end of the day, he had already waited for a very long time now, so there was no harm in waiting for just a few more days. As for the puppets, they did not need to get into the vehicle, but instead, Jack could simply summon them wherever he was, that being a restriction that had already been removed by the system after he entered into the stronghold domain. According to Sylvia, it was going to take them a long period of time for them to be able to reach the Devon stronghold. If they wanted to get there fast, they needed a ship. But that was not something that Jack currently possessed. So, they had to depend on the vehicle. After the improvement due to the fact that currently, Jack's skills had also been improved due to the intermediate level of information that he had received from the system, he was able to improve the vehicle. So, not only was the car capable of lasting for long distances, but even the speed that it could move with was also high. We will have to pass 2 strongholds to be able to reach to the Devon stronghold, Sylvia stated from the backseat of the car. She was not sure about what Jack was going to do in the Devon stronghold, and the reason why he had actually targeted that stronghold specifically, but nonetheless, she didn't care much. To come as long as there was no enmity that existed between Jack and her family, she didn't care. How far is the first stronghold from here? Jack asked as he continued to drive. It should be about 180 kilometers. Sylvia responded. At the same time, she looked out of the window of the car, and she could not help but be surprised by the speed possessed by this car. At this moment, it was actually moving at a speed of 230 kilometers per hour. So, it was going to take them less than 1 hour to be able to reach the first stronghold. Okay. I guess we can increase the speed of this thing. Jack shrugged his shoulder. He responded. Immediately after that, he stepped on the accelerator, drastically increasing the speed of the car. The speed suddenly increased from 230 kilometers per hour to about 310 kilometers per hour. Had it not been for the fact that there was actually a road within the stronghold domain that led to the other strongholds, this car would not have been capable of moving so smoothly. But since the roads existed and they were in a good condition, the car was practically flying. Everything outside of the window had suddenly blurred due to the speed at which the car was moving at. As for Jack, he was not having much trouble controlling the car. Currently, he was at the 9th stage of the superhuman level. And other than that, his mind ability had been awakened, improving his senses drastically. So, he was capable of navigating even after such speed. The only person that was having much trouble on seeing what was going on outside was actually Sylvia. She was the only one who was at the 2nd stage of the superhuman level, while everyone else inside the vehicle was at the 9th stage of the superhuman level. In a little bit over half an hour, Jack and his group had finally arrived at the first stronghold. According to Sylvia, this stronghold was stronghold number 93. Since it had only been half an hour or so since they departed from stronghold number 17, the group did not stop at this stronghold. In any case, they were not going to be allowed into this stronghold, unless they revealed the fact that they were actually superhumans. That was something that was going to grab a lot of attention, something that Jack was not willing, So, they just continued until they arrived at stronghold number 57 about an hour later. The distance between stronghold number 93 and stronghold number 57 was quite big, so it took them a little bit more time even with the speed at which Jack was driving the car at. After reaching here, Jack and his group did not stop as well, but instead, they just continued, going past stronghold number 116, which took them about 45 minutes, before finally arriving at Devon's stronghold in about 2 hours. They had started the journey, and it took them over 4 hours. By the time that they arrived at the Devon stronghold, nighttime was already sitting in considering that they had left a stronghold number 17 a little late in the afternoon. After they finally arrived at the Devon stronghold, it was finally the time that Sylvia was going to act. Just like all the other strongholds, not just anybody was allowed into a big stronghold, as it could have been seen from the late Derek. Although he himself was also from a big stronghold, he was not allowed into this stronghold, and that was something that he knew, the reason why he did not even bother to go ahead and try to enter into this place. And right now, Jack and his group did not have any known background, so it was obvious that it was going to be impossible for them to be able to enter into the Devon stronghold, unless they wanted to use force. But using force to enter into this place was definitely not an option considering that Jack was not sure about the power levels of this place. So, it was better if they entered using the available means, which was Sylvia. As the car approached the entrance of the stronghold, it was stopped by the group of people here. And just as Jack was waiting for Sylvia to take action, a system prompt that surprised him appeared in front of him. There are 3 level 5 superhumans present at the entrance of the stronghold. This was completely unexpected to Jack. Of course he had expected that there was definitely a person that was at a higher power level guarding at the entrance of a big stronghold like this one. Just like the ones at the entrance of stronghold number 17. There had to be a person that was monitoring every action and activity that was taking place at the entrance of the stronghold. At the same time, they were there just in case there was going to be a person with high combat power that was going to try to sneak into a stronghold like this one. As for those that were of really high power level, according to logic, those people did not have to sneak into a stronghold like this one. They could just ask, and they would definitely be allowed in case there was any business that they needed to do inside the stronghold. Unlike the Force stronghold, just like stronghold number 17, the Devon stronghold was also possessing several organizations and families. There was a fight for power, but nevertheless, there was still a certain family that possessed the highest position amongst all the organizations and families. Although they held the highest power, that did not imply that they had full control of the entire stronghold. But nevertheless, they possessed the most capabilities, businesses, and manpower in the entire stronghold. So, it could be said that they were the lords of the stronghold. Of course, Jack was not intimidated by the power that the forces present in this stronghold possessed, but instead, he was actually excited about it. For them to be able to reach this level of power, that implied that they possessed enough resources that were capable of nurturing them. So, Jack believed that although it was going to take some time, it was definitely not impossible for him to be able to conquer this entire stronghold in just the remaining 23 days. In fact, it was supposed to be 22 days considering that today was completely wasted on traveling. For him to be able to level up, he was definitely going to need to do something. And unlike during the time that he was in stronghold number 17, he was not going to start taking action slowly, but instead, he was going to start big from the very start. He wanted to see if there was actually a possibility that he was going to be able to go above the superhuman level. Although he was not sure about the level that was beyond the superhuman level, but still, he believed that it existed. And just looking at the lineup of the people that were in charge of the security of the entrance into the stronghold, Jack was sure that there was definitely a person or two that had already gone beyond the superhuman level. So, all that he had to do was to make sure that he did not attract the attention of those that going beyond the superhuman level. As for the rest of the people that were in the superhuman level or below, those were the ones that he could deal with easily. Sylvia got out of the car, before walking towards the guards. She was walking with confidence, the same as the one that she possessed during the time that she was in stronghold number 17, in front of her subordinates in the Panthers organization. Hold it there. What is your aim of visiting this place? One of the people that were in charge of the security of this place looked at Sylvia and asked with raised brows. This was not the first time that he had seen a person coming over, trying to enter into the stronghold. But this was definitely the first time that he had seen someone coming over with confidence like the one that Sylvia possessed. At the end of the day, the majority of the people that came over trying to enter into the Devon stronghold were all coming from small strongholds. So, when they came over, all of them looked kind of nervous. But looking at Sylvia, there was not even a single hint of nervousness on her face, but instead, there was both excitement and confidence. "I'm going back home," Sylvia responded as she looked at the man in front of her. Completely the opposite of a small stronghold like stronghold number 17. The people in this big stronghold were quite disciplined. All those that were in charge of security of this place were wearing the armor that was designed by the families or organizations that they belonged to. Of course, the armors that they were putting on were not made from metal, but instead, they were made out of special fabric. This enabled those that were wearing the armors throughout to be comfortable in them. "Going back home? Are you sure that you are not lost?" another man asked with a frown on his face. Currently, in front of Sylvia, there was a group of 6 men. Each and every one of them was wearing armors that looked alike, implying that they were from the same force. "What is your name?" the one who looked like the leader of the group asked as he looked at Sylvia. For some reason, he could tell that she looked kind of familiar, but that familiarity was not enough for him to be able to recognize her. "I am Sylvia Storm," Sylvia stated confidently. Jack and his group were not that far away from where Sylvia was. So, the moment that they heard her, they could not help but be a little bit surprised. During the first time that they had met, Sylvia had introduced herself as Sylvia Brown. But now, she was actually Sylvia Storm. Nonetheless, he did not think much about it considering that Sylvia was not going to use her family name if she was trying to hide herself from her brother. "You are a member of the Storm family? Who are you trying to mess around with? Do you think that the Storm family is just a normal family that you can use its name so simply?" another man who was quite tall, about 2 meters, asked as he looked at Sylvia. To say the truth, he was not actually defending the Storm family here, but instead, it was just that he possessed some hatred for the Storm family. That was due to the fact that the force that he belonged to was enemies with the Storm family which Sylvia possessed. So the moment that Sylvia mentioned the name, he was actually irritated by that name. And since she was claiming that she was a member of that family, he had to cause trouble for her, although he was pretty sure that she was just trying to play a prank on them. Instead of responding, Sylvia simply took out a communication device. This was the same communication device that she had been using to communicate with her aunt. After pressing on the screen for a few times, the call went through. After a while, a female voice came through the communication device. "You have already arrived, right?" Sylvia aunt asked. "Yes, aunt. I have already arrived, but there's someone here trying to prevent me from entering into the stronghold," Sylvia responded as she looked at the tall man. Although this guy had not said much, Sylvia already knew that this guy was going to target her. No matter what she was going to say, this guy was definitely going to be against her. As for this group of people, she of course knew the armors that were on their bodies. On the armor, there was an insignia of a flying crow, something that she was very familiar with. It is not as if the enmity between her family and this force had begun recently. Even during the time that she was still inside this stronghold, there was still enmity between them. This enmity was something that had begun almost a decade ago. "Wait up a little bit. I'll ask someone to pick you up," Sylvia's aunt responded. Immediately after that, the communication between the two of them was ended. The group of 6 men in front of Sylvia looked at her, quite curious about who it was that she was communicating with. They were not sure about who it was, but from the looks of it, it seemed that what Sylvia had said previously was actually true. But even if it was true, they had to wait for someone from within the stronghold to give the permission. Otherwise, no matter how many times Sylvia stated that she was actually a member of this stronghold, they would not allow her to enter. As for Sylvia, she did not even bother to give them the user ID. If she did that, they would definitely recognize the user ID as the one that was registered within this big stronghold. But nevertheless, it seemed that these people were not much curious about it, considering that they were not the ones wasting their time here. Not long after, a young man finally walked out of the stronghold's entrance. He was a young man in his late 20s. As he walked, those around him looked at him with awe in their eyes. They knew who this person was. He was a prodigy within the Devon stronghold. He was someone whose future was already determined to be brighter as long as he managed to grow up. The young man came straight to Sylvia. With a smile on his face, he stretched his hand forward and said, "Aunt, it is nice to see you coming back. Uncle was just about to come and look for you personally." "It is nice to see you again, Miguel. It seems that you are all grown up right now. How long has it been since I last saw you?" "About 6 years or 7, Sylvia stated with a smile on her face as she looked at the young man in front of her. She of course ignored the part where he had said about her brother coming to look for her personally. This was the first time that Jack and the group had seen a smile on Sylvia's face, one that was filled with fondness and love. So, they were a little surprised, but that was all. The young man in front of Sylvia was someone that she was having a good impression of. Additionally, during the time that she was here, the two of them hit it off quite well, and Miguel had formed some kind of dependence on Sylvia. So, during the time that Sylvia decided to leave this place, Miguel felt a little bit devastated, but nevertheless, he moved on. But right now, looking at his aunt in front of him, he could not help but get excited. But of course, since he was a grown-up right now, he was capable of controlling his emotions quite well. So, in front of everyone here, there was no either he was going to show much emotions. It has been a long time, aunt. I missed you a lot. I'm not the only one though, Miguel stated as he looked at Sylvia. If one looked closely, they could see that there were actually some tears glistening in the corners of his eyes, but he was holding himself together. Okay, let's go. I need to see your grandma. I really miss her a lot, Sylvia stated with the same smile on her face. Of course, the grandma that she was talking about was the aunt that she was talking to during the time that she was away from this stronghold. Of course, aunt. People sure miss you inside here, Miguel stated. He was just about to turn around and lead the way into the stronghold when he was stopped by Sylvia. He looked at her a little bit confusedly, wondering what it was that Sylvia wanted to say that could not be said after they got into the stronghold. But looking at her, he saw that she was looking at a car that was not that far from where they were. Raising his brows a little, he looked towards the car curiously. He was wondering who it was that had come with his aunt at this moment. I'll introduce you to this group of people. They are the friends that I made during the time that I was away, Sylvia stated as she began walking towards the car. Quite curious about the friends that his aunt had made, Miguel also followed behind Sylvia. But at the same time, he could not help but wonder why it was that Jack and his group were actually not getting out of the car. Nevertheless, since he did not know how deep the relationship between Sylvia and this group was, he decided not to pursue the matter. At the end of the day, it was not as if it was something big. After they arrived there, Jack rolled down the windows. And when Miguel saw the young faces inside the car, he could not help but be a little bit surprised. He was not expecting that the friends that Sylvia was talking about were actually this young. And just looking at them, he could tell that all of them were actually younger than he was. The oldest amongst them was Samantha, but she was younger than him by about a year or so. That was actually the reality, but still, Miguel could not tell the actual age of Samantha. Currently, Samantha looked younger than previously because she had become a superhuman and a transformation had occurred on her. Now, not only was she beautiful, but she was also looking younger, possessing a seductive yet mature charm. This was something that the young girls did not possess, something that made her stand out in the entire group in her own way. But of course Miguel's eyes focused on a single person the most. And that was none other than Celine. Out of all the ladies here inside the car, she was definitely the most beautiful amongst them. So for a moment, Miguel was a little bit enchanted by the beauty that Celine possessed. Initially, even before she became a superhuman, she was already beautiful. And right now, she was at the 9th stage of the superhuman level, making her even more beautiful. Miguel finally came back to his senses when Sylvia touched his shoulder. When she looked at her, she shook her head towards him. Immediately, Miguel understood that and looked towards the driver's seat where Jack was seated. Just from the hint that he had received from Sylvia, he realized that Jack and Celine were actually together. And looking at Jack right now, this guy was really outstanding. Had it not been for the fact that he was a man, Miguel would have definitely been attracted by him as well. Just looking at the two of them seated together, it seemed that they were really a good match. Not only did they look extraordinary, but even their appearances matched. The silver hair on Jack's head was quite unique, with only a few people possessing it. Miguel felt a little bit envious of Jack, but of course, there was no hatred at all. It was just a simple envy that he had gotten and how lucky this guy was. But that was all. Jack, Celine, Denali, and Samantha. Sylvia began the introduction as she pointed towards each person that she spoke his or her name. After that, she pointed at Miguel said, "This is my niece, Miguel. Nice to meet you." Miguel stretched his hand to shake Celine's. Celine did not refuse, and shook his hand. Miguel went ahead and shook everyone's hand, but he had to move around the car in order to be able to reach all of them. Although he was a little displeased by the fact that he was greeting the group, but they did not actually come out of the car, he nonetheless did not mind. They were his aunt's friends at the end of the day. As for Jack and his group, it was not that they were quite arrogant or something like that. It was just that they found it some to get out of the car just for simple greetings, only to get back into the car so that they could enter into the stronghold. Sylvia already understood Jack's personality, so she was not surprised when nobody actually got out of the car. After the introductions, Sylvia looked at Jack and said, "You can follow us. I'm going with my niece. I'm going to make arrangements on where you're going to stay. There's no need for that. You can go back to your family for some reunion. As far as, we will just find somewhere to settle." Jack shook his head as he responded. Currently, he was not willing to go into the Storm family. He was a stranger there, and he did not know anybody in that place. So, it was better if he got a place to stay for himself and his group. Although he knew Sylvia, but it was clear that Sylvia did not possess much the influence after disappearing for a long time. Sylvia thought about it for a moment and agreed to it. In any case, it was not as if she was going to babysit Jack and his group. Initially, Jack had decided to come to this stronghold, so that implied that he was definitely having plans of his own. "Okay then. You will inform me of where you'll be staying. I'll come over after I talk to my aunt," Sylvia stated. After Jack nodded his head, Sylvia left together with Miguel. As for Jack, they were no longer prevented from entering into the stronghold after those that were in charge of security realized that Jack and his group were related to Sylvia and the Storm family. After entering the stronghold, Jack realized that this place was way more advanced as compared to the stronghold that they had just come from. In any case, this was to be expected considering that this stronghold was way bigger as compared to stronghold number 17. Jack and his group decided to look for a place to stay. Right now, Jack was not going to look for a building or anything like that. Currently, he himself knew that he was definitely not going to be able to afford purchasing something like that. It was not that he did not have star coins. In fact, star coins were what he did not lack. Since he had taken over all the businesses that were owned by the Force organization and the Panthers organization, there was always an influx of star coins on a daily basis. With the 100 times income multiplier system, the income was multiplied by 100 times. So currently, he possessed so many star coins that he did not even know the balance because he did not even bother to look at them. After going around inside the car, they finally found an inn. One had to know that all these strongholds actually operated just like a normal city. But still, there was always a difference when it came to some other things, just like the technological level in this place. To get a place for them to stay, Jack used the star coins. If it was purchasing a building or something like that, although he could use the star coins were definitely not the most popular within this stronghold. Nevertheless, for them to be able to find a place that they could stay for a month, they paid a total of 20 million star coins. That was a hefty price considering that they were just staying there for a single month, and not even purchasing the place. But Jack had already expected something like this considering that this was a big stronghold, and everything was sold at a higher price. Additionally, the most valued thing was definitely the resources, and not the star coins. On the other side, after leaving Jack and his group alone, finally, Sylvia could speak freely with Miguel. She looked at him, waiting for him to tell her about what he had been experiencing during this time. Currently, they were inside a vehicle that Miguel had come in, since he was coming to pick up his aunt, and he himself was a member of the Storm family, a big family in the stronghold. There was no way that he was going to come with a small vehicle. So currently, inside this luxurious vehicle that possessed a lot of space, Sylvia was holding a glass of wine as she drowned it down slowly. When Miguel noticed that Sylvia was looking at him, he cleared his throat and said, "Actually, not many things happened during the time that you were away. The crows are our enemies just as they were before, and the enmity between our family and that organization has not increased, and neither has it decreased. Other than that, Alicia has gotten engaged to someone, but apparently, she doesn't want to get married to David. You know him, right? You're trying to imply David who belongs to Walker family? Although I don't really know this David guy, from the stories that I heard about him, he sure is a good boy. So, I don't think that Alicia got a wrong match. So why is she not willing to be married to him?" Sylvia responded with a thoughtful expression on her face. Alicia simply said that she did not like him, but you know, for a family like ours, we are not giving the privilege of falling in love and so on. So, it is always something good if a person really gets a good person, rather than being married off to a scum. Miguel shrugged his shoulder as he responded. Sylvia nodded her head. Even she herself had actually gotten engaged to someone during the time that she was back here. But since she did not want to get married, Considering the traits of the other person, she decided to leave this place. But of course there was no way that she was going to be allowed to get out of here that easily. So in the end, she compromised with her brother, promising that she would be able to make herself more valuable, to the extent that they would be able to see that it was going to be a waste if she was actually married to that person. Sylvia did not know what to say after it turned out that Alicia did not like the other party. In any case, she herself did not really like this matter about arranged marriages. Nonetheless, since they were members of a big family, they enjoyed a lot of privileges. But still, there was always something that they needed to sacrifice as they could not get everything that they wanted. As if remembering something, Sylvia looked at Miguel and asked, "Oh, I heard that Alicia caused trouble. Do you know about it?" Miguel shook his head as he responded, "I'm not much sure about the details, but what I know is that she went out of the stronghold and went to the normal world. I don't know what she did there, but the moment that she came back into the stronghold, Aunt began doing a lot of investigation. I don't know what it is that she is looking for, but it is clear that whatever it is that Alicia had done was definitely not something simple. We are not sure if it is going to cause trouble or not, but we have to be prepared for the worst." Sylvia raised her brows at that. Of course she knew her sister-in-law. That lady was not only smart, but she was also a cautious person. Additionally, she really loved Alicia, so, if something was about to happen to Alicia, she would definitely try all that she could in order to be able to protect her. From the way that I know Alicia, I definitely believe that she is not a person that goes around causing trouble. So this is going to be new if it is actually a trouble that she has gone out and created," Sylvia stated as she placed down the glass of wine on the table that was placed in between the seats inside of the vehicle. Miguel simply shrugged his shoulder in response. He himself did not know much about the details considering that he was not informed about it. So, there was nothing that he could do about it, but just hope that there was definitely not something that was going to affect the family in the future. "Right, Aunt, do you mind telling me more about those friends of yours?" Miguel asked curiously as he looked at Sylvia with eyes that were filled with anticipation and curiosity. Sylvia looked at her niece with a little surprise. This was definitely the first time that he was getting interested in other people's matters, and those people were not even related to him. In the family, other than herself, there was definitely not any other person that Miguel really focused much on, so she was of course surprised. Just then, she thought of something and looked at Miguel with a smile on her face. "Don't tell me that you have already fallen for that girl, have you?" Sylvia asked teasingly. Miguel was caught off guard by that question. He was not expecting something like that at all. But at the same time, he could not help but think of Celine. And to say the truth, he was actually captivated by her. Still, there was no way that he was going to tell Sylvia about that. So, he simply shook his head and responded, "You must be joking, Aunt. We just met today, how can I fall for her? Have you never heard of something like love at first sight? Since you have just met, could it be that this is actually love at first sight that I'm experiencing?" Sylvia continued asking with a sly smile carved on her lips. The personality that Sylvia was showing in front of Miguel was definitely different as compared to the one that she was showing in front of her subordinates back at the Panthers organization. If any of them saw the current Sylvia, they would actually think that she was a completely different person. And to say the truth, this was actually her real personality, and the one that she was showing in front of her subordinates was just a facade that she had created. No way, even if there's something like love at first sight, not to mention that she has a boyfriend, I myself will not be able to marry her even if I want to. My engagement is about to be arranged right now." Miguel responded a little flustered. "Oh, how sure are you that if you really loved her, my brother will not accept you marrying her? You don't even know about her, yet you have already thought of that?" Sylvia asked, completely ignoring the part where Miguel had stated that Celine had a boyfriend, and the part where his engagement was getting arranged. "Well, that is just something that I guessed. From what I can tell, you definitely did not go to any big stronghold during the time that you were away. That means that you were inside a small stronghold. And then, you created friends. That means that these friends that you came with are definitely from the small stronghold that you were in before. With such a background, there is definitely no way that Uncle is going to accept marriage between us," Miguel analyzed. Sylvia could not help but be amazed by this kid's brain. He was smart, and he was also a prodigy when it came to training. So, he was actually holding a high position in the family at the moment. "You are right about one thing. It is true that I actually went to a small stronghold, but who told you that everyone inside a small stronghold is actually from a small background? Just like me, I was living in a small stronghold, but did that mean that I was from a small background?" Sylvia pointed out the point that Miguel had missed in his analysis. Miguel's eyes got a hint of realization. But to say the truth, he had not expected that Jack and his group were actually from a big background. But then thinking about it, they had just said that they were actually going to take care of themselves during the time but they were inside here. If they were actually from a small stronghold, then that implied that they would definitely not be capable of surviving in this place. After all, to survive in this place, a lot of wealth was actually required. If a low-level person inside this stronghold actually went to a small stronghold, they would be considered one of the richest people in that stronghold. And just thinking of the confidence that Jack possessed during the time that he was saying that they were going to take care of themselves, Miguel realized that what Sylvia had said was actually true. What is their real background then? Are they also part of a big stronghold? Miguel asked curiously. At this time, Sylvia's expression became serious. She looked at the niece in front of her and said, "Listen to me carefully this time." Looking at the serious expression that was on Sylvia's face, Miguel also became serious. He was sure that the moment that Sylvia became serious, that implied that the matter that she was talking about was definitely something that he had to pay attention to. If you have any feelings for Celine, you better forget about it right now. It is not that the background that she's coming from is quite low, but just herself, she's enough to be able to make the entire family agree to the marriage between the two of you without hesitation. But I'll tell you something, no matter what, you have to make sure that you don't provoke any of them. But that is especially so for Celine's boyfriend. He is definitely someone that you don't want to have as an enemy. So, try as much as you can to make sure that rather than being an enemy, you become friends, and if you cannot become friends, acquaintances is better than becoming enemies with him. After settling down, Jack and his group immediately decided to take action. Of course, Jack did not have much time, so there was no way he was going to waste the little time that he had. The first thing that he did was to purchase an item, and immediately after that, he sold it at a price that was lower. But of course, he did not receive the star coins, but instead, he actually took another item that was of a lower price as compared to the one that he was selling. Immediately after that, there was the multiplier effect from the system. Instead of having it multiplied by 100 times in terms of quality, Jack decided on quantity instead. And with 100 more, he sold all of them, at a price that was lower than the market value. Of course this time, there was no income multiplier effect considering that whatever it was that Jack was selling was actually something that had already been multiplied by the system. Nevertheless, after selling the items in the forms of barter trade, Jack went ahead and sold the next items that he received. And as usual, he received other items that were of a lower value as compared to the ones that he possessed. But of course, there was always a limit to the value of the items that he was going to exchange for what he currently possessed. Even if the value of what he was going to take was going to be low, that was going to be a maximum limit to how low it could be. For the next batch of items, Jack went ahead and sold them just like he did before. With that, the same, he decided to have an increase in terms of quality. After the increase in terms of quality, Jack went ahead and exchanged for other items using the items that he was currently possessing. This time, he did not go for those that were having a lower value, but instead, he exchanged for other items that possessed the same value as the ones that he was having. But of course, that was something that Jack did not try to do, and that was to sell the consumables. Every consumable that came from the system was something that would take effect immediately. So, the moment that a person realized that the serum or pill that they took had actually taken effect immediately, they would definitely suspect that there was something wrong with it. And since Jack was not ready, he was not going to attract that much attention. So, all the consumables were kept by him. At the same time, he was actually preparing them so that he could give them to the puppets. The puppets could be improved using a chance of the multiplier effect, or they could actually be improved using the normal means as well. So, since Jack was not currently willing to give up the multiplier effect chance, he decided to use the normal methods. Other than trying to increase his own strength and that of his group, Jack also tried to gain as much information about the Devon stronghold as he could get. It was true that he possessed information about the Devon stronghold, but that was just the very basic information that he could get. So, since he was supposed to conquer this entire stronghold, the only thing that he could do was to gain as much information as possible. At the same time, he had to identify who it was that he had to deal with first, or who it was that he was supposed to put much emphasis on. For the first week that Jack and his group were inside the stronghold, they did not do much other than selling the items that they were receiving, before they were multiplied by the system by 100 times. Of course Celine, Samantha, and Denali both realized that there had to be something that was happening here. At the end of the day, how is it possible that Jack was actually receiving several high-quality items out of nowhere? But since this was not the first time that they had observed as Jack went ahead and brought out several items that were not easily found even in the small stronghold that they were in. And right now, looking at the quality of the items that he was taking out, they were obviously quite higher as compared to the ones that he was having previously. Just like that, an entire week went by just like that. During this time, Jack and his group had interacted with Sylvia, but the interactions were quite minimal. It seemed that Sylvia had a lot of things to take care of now that he had come back to her family. Additionally, due to the revelation that she currently possessed a special ability, the importance that she held in the family also increased. But this also went ahead and caused several waves to rise within the stronghold. Those that did not like the Storm family were obviously displeased about this. It was not that there were no other people inside their own forces that possessed special abilities. But since special abilities were quite rare, even just a single one of them was enough to be able to boost the power of an entire force. And that was especially so for a special ability like the one that Sylvia possessed, one that was related to the mind. In any case, the information that the other forces knew was that Sylvia came back with a special ability. But that special ability was related to the mind, though they did not know which mind ability she specifically possessed. The ones that took action not long after the information about Sylvia possessing the special ability were obviously the Crow organization. They were the biggest enemies of the Storm family. The appearance of a special ability that was related to the mind in the Storm family was definitely not good news to them. Of course, this was not the first ability that was related to the mind that had actually appeared within the Storm family. But at least, they could tolerate one of them being present. But tolerating didn't mean that they did not try several times to get rid of the owner of the special ability. And right now, with the two of them present in the same family, this was definitely going to cause them a disadvantage in the near future in case they needed to fight. The action that the other forces took was to try and recruit Sylvia into their own forces. Although they knew that it was going to be difficult, but still, they wanted to try. Sylvia had not been in the stronghold for some time, and perhaps, the bond that she shared with her family had actually reduced. That was the exact reason why they wanted to try and recruit her into their forces by offering her several great benefits. But they were bound to be disappointed. From the very start, Sylvia had never had the intention of leaving her family for any other force. And other than that, the moment that she came back and revealed that she currently possessed a special ability, her brother went ahead and gave her a lot of resources. She had been away for a long time, and due to that, the improvement of her strength was quite low. And for a person of her age, and of the same position as the one that she was holding, the current power level that was at the second stage of the superhuman level was definitely not something that she was supposed to be having. What Jack was doing on the other hand did not attract that much attention, though that did not mean that it did not attract attention. Of course, there was always a group of people that thought that Jack was possessing several items that were of a high quality, but he did not belong to any organization or family. So, they thought that he was just a fat sheep, and they could target him. But of course, anyone that targeted him ended up disappearing without a trace. And after an entire week, finally, Jack had found something that he was capable of using to advance his strength. He was currently at the 9th stage of the superhuman level, and that implied that anything that was capable of affecting superhumans was ineffective if he used it. And during this entire week, other than trying to make sure that he gained as many resources as he could, there was also a situation where he was trying as much as he could to make sure that he gained something that could improve his strength. But of course, to be able to gain something like that, he had to make a deal with a big organization. He had to get a high-level item first, before the item was multiplied by 100 times so that it could reach the level that he was looking for. In case there was actually anything that I was capable of affecting him, the system informed him that it would inform him of the presence of that item. But for an entire week, until the last day that he made the transaction, the system finally gave him what he was waiting for. But to be able to gain it, it was not that easy. He made large sales, leading to several items being multiplied by 100 times. But of course, there was the integration, something that Jack used in order to improve the quality of the final product. Inside the room that he had taken inside the inn, Jack looked at the small pellet in his hand. It was crystalline white, and it shone under the illumination of the light in the room, although the brightness that it emitted was not that much. This small pill was what the system called the evolution pill. Jack did not need a lot of information to be able to know what this pill was going to do after it was taken. The thing that attracted Jack's attention the most was definitely the fact that the ranking of this pill was actually a 10-star. According to what he knew, there was only the ranking that reached the 9-star level. But how was it possible that currently, he was possessing a pill that was at the 10-star level? For a moment, Jack almost thought that the pill that he had received from the system was actually a fake one. But, knowing that there was no way that the system was going to give him a fake pill, he agreed that the pill was originally, but could it be that there was a problem with the ranking? The host should not doubt the system. The ranking system that the host is using is the one that belongs to the humans, and not the system. For the system, the 10-star ranking actually exists, but it is very rare to be able to gain an item that is ranked at the 10-star level. Do you mind giving me more explanation than that? Jack asked in his mind. Although it was true that the system had given him information about the possibility of there being a 10-star rank, but still, that was not enough information for him to be able to process the reason why there was actually a 10-star rank. For the host to know the capabilities of the pill that has been granted to him, he will have to take it first. Jack, although he was expecting something like this, there was still some hope that the system was actually going to give him some response after the first explanation that it had given. Nevertheless, Jack simply shook his head. There was no need for him to focus on something like this, when the ranking did not even matter for the time being. So, he simply focused on the pellet in his hand. The system acted immediately and information about the evolution pill that he had received was displayed in front of his eyes. Evolution pill. 10 stars. Enables a superhuman who has reached the very limit of the superhuman level to evolve and reach the next level of human evolution. Jack. This time, Jack's mind was filled with several question marks. Of course he had already guessed that this evolution pill was something that was capable of helping him to reach the next level after the superhuman level, although the system had also mentioned something about it. But still, why was it that the description about the pill was still the same as the one that he had received from the system before he could even see the information about the pill? Whatever. Jack thought in his mind. Immediately after that, he asked the system, what am I supposed to do before I take this pill, and, is there anything that is going to happen that might be capable of affecting me in a way other than positively? The host can simply take the pill normally. As for the effects of taking the pill, it doesn't have much of a side effect on the host since the pill is from the system. The only effect that it is going to have on the host is to increase his strength drastically, allowing him to reach the next level of being a human. Jack shook his head. It was useless even if he decided to ask the system. So, after taking a deep breath, Jack popped the pill into his mouth. The moment that the pill touched his tongue, it melted, before he swallowed it. And the moment that it entered his throat, Jack suddenly felt that the temperatures in his body had began increasing drastically. The heat began spreading in his body slowly but drastically. And in no time at all, Jack suddenly felt that his body was on fire. He began sweating although it was currently cold. Left with no choice, Jack took off his shirt, exposing his fit body. As soon as he began observing his body, he realized that his body had become red, rather, his skin had turned red. Just as he was about to complain to the system about it saying that there was nothing that was going to affect him, the heat that he was feeling suddenly disappeared. In its place, what appeared was a sudden decrease in temperature. For a moment, although Jack was a superhuman, he was forced to shiver. He felt like he was actually dropped inside an ice cavern. Just like before, after about a minute, the temperatures finally began returning to normal. And as the temperatures began going back to normal, Jack suddenly felt that his body was undergoing several changes. Even though it was not something that he could observe, he just felt that he had grown taller, although he was seated. Additionally, he felt that his body mass had been increased slightly. The evolution that Jack could not see was that, currently, his internal organs were being strengthened. They were not the only ones considering that the changes that were occurring on Jack's body were occurring at a cellular level. At this moment, the strength that Jack possessed increased, and it did not just double, but instead, it was more like tripling. But of course, that was just something that could be seen from the very start, but in fact, the strength that had increased was definitely way more than that. It was just a matter of how well could Jack control it. At this moment, other than the genetic structure that was being improved, there was yet another part that was finally unlocked. At this moment, just as the changes were undergoing inside Jack's body, finally the system began revealing information about the level that he had reached. This was something that surprised Jack considering that the system never did the same thing during the time that he had reached the superhuman level. The information that he received at that time was superficial. But this time, the information that he was receiving from the system was deeper. It explained to him almost everything that he needed to know for the initial stage of the level that he had reached. According to the information that he had received from the system, at this level, the changes that were going to occur were no longer going to be related to the genes only, but instead, the brain was also going to be affected. A normal human was only capable of using 10% of the brain. But at this stage, they would be able to unlock the other parts of the brain, enabling them to be able to gain more abilities. Of course, there was always an improvement in almost every aspect of the body. But the one that saw the most improvement was definitely the thinking capacity of a person, their memory, and how far they could remember in the past. At the superhuman level, the one that they were focusing on was genetic optimization. By unlocking the genetic locks, they would be able to enhance the functions of the gene and its strengths. But in this new level that he had not received the name as of yet, the brain was being unlocked. As for how much the brain could be unlocked, that depended on a person. While Jack was processing all the information that he was receiving from the system, the changes that were occurring in his finally stopped. And at this moment, Jack had not only improved in terms of strength, but even when it came to appearance, he had improved. Had it not been for the fact that Jack was previously handsome, the changes that had occurred right now would have definitely been noticed the moment that he stepped out of the room. What Jack did not know was the fact that the moment that he managed to unlock another part of his brain, exceeding the 10% capacity that was being used by normal, ordinary, and superhumans, something else occurred. Azima, Kartu City, secret laboratory. The scientists kept on trying to make sure that the lady that was in a coma woke up. But no matter how much they tried during the past few weeks, there was no change that occurred. Although they could tell that the lady was alive, but no matter what kind of stimulation they gave her, nothing changed at all. That was something that was making them very frustrated. They had already been informed that if they did not succeed in making this lady wake up, they would definitely be killed. It was good enough that they had been given additional time, or otherwise they would have been dead by now. But of course, for the time to be extended, each and every one of them lost a finger. And according to the president, if they did not succeed, they were going to lose a hand next. Currently, inside a room that was surrounded by several glass walls, a scientist was looking at the lady on the bed who was being supported by several machines. He was frowning as he looked at the lady, trying to think of any method that they could use, that they had not used. Beep, beep, beep. Just as he was wondering, suddenly, beeping sounds came from the machines. And in the next moment, the lady who had been closing her eyes for several years finally opened them. And at this moment, those eyes were actually shining with a blue light. Not long after Jack had finished the evolution, with several changes occurring in his body, something else happened. For some reason, he felt that his heartbeat rate had suddenly increased. That was something that surprised him completely. Normally, the heartbeat would only increase in certain situations, but at this moment, he was just relaxing, and he had not done anything strenuous. Additionally, it was not as if he had experienced something that frightened him or anything like that. So, he failed to understand the reason why the intensity of his heartbeat had suddenly increased. This was the first time that he was experiencing something like this. And even the information that he possessed in his mind about medicine did not explain anything like the one that he was currently experiencing. Just as Jack was about to ask the system if it knew anything about what was happening, the intensity of his heartbeat suddenly returned to normal. And immediately after that, a system prompt appeared in front of him. System reminder. The second task that has been given to the host will have its time limit expiring in less than 3 weeks. Jack's mind was suddenly filled with question marks. In normal situations, he had never been actually reminded by the system about the timeline of the task that he had been granted during the emergency program missions. Right now, the system was actually trying to remind him about the mission that he was supposed to complete, the mission that he was supposed to find about where his mother was located. According to logic, if the system was actually supposed to give a reminder, then, the one that he was supposed to receive a reminder about was definitely the mission that was related to the matter of him conquering the entire Devon stronghold. But now, only a little more than 2 weeks were remaining, but still, there was no reminder from the system. Additionally, the time that he was supposed to complete the first task from the system was definitely the shortest right now. System, Jack called in his mind. Although he was sure that the system was not going to respond to his question, he had to try nonetheless. But it seemed that Jack had thought it falsely, because at this moment, even before he could finish what he was saying, another prompt from the system appeared in front of him. This is a special reminder from the system. Not all the tasks from the system will receive the same reminder. But for the second task that was given to the host, something occurred that is related to the task. It is due to this occurrence that the host is given the privilege of being reminded of the task and the timeline in which he is supposed to complete it in case he has forgotten about it. Jack. If possible, Jack really wanted to get that guide from the system, Angel, so that he could beat him up so thoroughly. What was the privilege here? He had already kept this matter in mind considering that there was a punishment that awaited him as long as he failed to complete the mission. It was as if he was having an axe hanging above his neck. How could he actually forget about something like that? That was a very big reminder, making sure that he was not going to forget about it. Additionally, this was a matter concerning his mother. How could he forget about his mother? Wasn't this privilege just wasted? If possible, Jack would have wanted this privilege to be used somewhere else, maybe giving him something that would make him invincible in the entire world? Or maybe the entire universe? Just as Jack was thinking of this, the system continued. Currently, the host is going to continue giving its privileges to the host. And another privilege that is coming from the system is giving the host a clue about where his mother is located. Although the clue is not going to be straight to the point, but still, it is going to be able to enable the host to narrow down his search radius. Jack was stunned. He had not expected that the system was going to help him to complete the mission. This was completely unexpected for him. In any case, it was better. Even if the system was going to claim that it was only going to give him a clue that was not direct, but still, it was better. At the end of the day, rather than making him to search for a single person in the entire world, it would be better if he was given a certain region. The host's mother is located outside of the stronghold domain, in the normal world. In the normal world, the host's mother is currently found within 5 countries located in between Azima and Atati. Jack thought about the information that he had been given by the system for a moment. Although the information was not straight to the point, but still, it was better. Other than the fact that the system had eliminated the stronghold domain, it had also gone ahead and removed several continents. Now, he only had 5 nations in which he was supposed to look for information about his mother. Although the 5 nations were quite big, but still, it was better. After taking a deep breath, Jack immediately decided. Without hesitation, he communicated with 30 puppets at the same time. Then, he informed them that they were supposed to go out of the stronghold domain, to look for information about his mother. Jack did not summon them into the Devon stronghold, but instead, he only asked them to go out. It was a good thing that even before he entered the stronghold, he had left some of them within stronghold number 17, while others were still in the normal world. Although Jack was capable of summoning the puppets, that did not imply that he had a place where he could keep them. But instead, if he summoned them here, they were going to appear where he was. As for the matter of them disappearing, that was impossible. It was a good thing that during the time that he came into the stronghold domain, he did not summon all the puppets into the stronghold domain. He had left a few outside, 10 of them. And right now, added with the one that had already been sent out, with the 30 that he was sending out this time, that would be a total of 41 that were going to continue with the search of the information about his mother's location. During the time that he was sending out that single puppet, it was not as if the other puppets were not there, but instead, they all had responsibilities with the people that they were supposed to protect. As for Celine's parents, they did not have any puppet that was protecting them personally. So, the one that was sent over was not only strong, but it was the one that was going to be in charge of them. So, after finishing giving the shadow organization the resources that he had sent over, it was going to protect the 2. With that finally out of the way, Jack decided to increase the speed at which he was operating. Currently, although it was true that he had received a clue about the information of where his mother was, that was still something that he did not understand. Why was it that his mother was present inside the normal world? Additionally, if she was in the normal world, then why did she not appear all these years? Of course Jack understood that there had to be a reason behind that. But that reason was something that he wanted to know. With all the connections that she was having, and even the contracts that she had signed, it was definitely not possible for her to be able to live a normal life that easily. And if she had managed to dodge the contracts that she had signed, then that implied that she had found a method that she was going to use to be able to avoid the punishment from the contract. But that was something that had not been found until now. With that kind of information, in case there was anybody that came to know about it, they would definitely try to look for her. For that reason, it was impossible for her to be able to live in peace. While the puppets were going to be in charge of looking for information about his mother, whose image he had transferred directly into the puppets' minds considering that there was a telepathic connection between them, Jack decided to complete this first task as soon as possible. Due to that, other than the motivation that he was having of going to look for his mother, the confidence that he had gotten after going past the superhuman level was another thing that encouraged him to complete the task as soon as possible. So without hesitation, he began another plan that he had been having in mind. He was not sure if it was going to work, but it was better if he tried it out. So, he went ahead and looked for a group of people. Immediately after that, he asked them to give him information about the Storm family. But of course, he was not making it as if he was going to purchase the information, but instead, these people were going to gain something from him by paying with the information. At this moment, Jack was hoping that this information was going to be considered by the system to be income, and not just a simple exchange. Of course, a lot of people found it weird. But still, those that thought that this was going to be an easy income for them went ahead and exchanged the information that they possessed about the Storm family, for several items that Jack possessed. You've earned poor level information. Multiplier applied. You've earned basic level information. Finally, what Jack had been looking forward to appeared. A system prompt appeared in front of him, informing him of the fact that the information that he had received was actually considered as income by the system. Although he was a little bit dissatisfied by the fact that the system actually considered the information that he had received as poor quality, and he only got the basic level information, but it was better than nothing at all. From this, Jack could tell that it was actually possible for him to be able to gain information about anything, and have the system multiply it by 100 times, before he gained even deeper details about the information that he was looking for. With that in mind, Jack finally decided that he was going to look for information deeply. But of course, he was not going to target the Storm family this time. But instead, he was going to target the biggest force present in the entire stronghold. If he wanted to gain the position of a supreme leader of the entire stronghold, he had to take care of the biggest influence in the entire stronghold first. So, that was what Jack was targeting. But this time, instead of just going ahead and looking for information about them like the method that he was using, where several people came over and gave him information that they had only heard through rumors, this time, he was going to look for a person that really possessed information. This poor level information was definitely not something that he was willing to receive again. Even after the multiplier effect was applied, he only received basic information about the Storm family. Just as Jack was about to conclude, another prompt appeared in front of him. The basic information about the Storm family has been concluded to possess the same information. Does the host wish for them to be integrated? Oh, I almost forgot about that. Integrate. Jack stated in his mind. He had almost forgotten about the fact that the city was capable of integrating the income that he was receiving, if it actually possessed the same function. Since the basic information that he had received was the information about the Storm family, it was actually capable of being integrated, so that he could gain deeper information about the Storm family. It was not as if Jack was willing to target the Storm family, but instead, since the Storm family was present within the same stronghold that he was supposed to conquer, he had to possess information about them nonetheless. This was just to make sure that in case there was a time that he needed to deal with them, he would be capable of doing so easily. Integration successful. You receive advanced level information about the Storm family. Jack raised his brows a little after seeing the prompt from the system. He had not expected that the system was going to be capable of integrating the basic information, to the extent that it had already gone past the intermediate level, and reached the advanced level. Of course, for the moment, Jack was not going to go through the information. He still wanted to carry out the plan that he was having in his mind. And that was to find information about the biggest force present in the entire stronghold. They were known as the Ace Group. It was actually not a family, and not an organization, but instead, it was a group of people that congregated together, and formed a group that was now considered the superpower of the entire stronghold. It might be true that they did not possess full control over the entire stronghold, but they definitely possessed the most influence in the stronghold. According to the information that he had received until now, it seemed that this Ace Group was formed by several small organizations that had come together. At that time, they were actually facing a lot of oppression from the big organizations and families present in the stronghold. Secretly, they formed an alliance. Then later on, they began sharing resources, and ended up training several people that were capable of matching those from the big organizations and families. But of course, to be able to gain those resources that they were using to be able to nurture those people, it was not easy. They used some kind of connection which was currently unknown, but still, they managed to become who they were currently ever since then. It was obvious that there was the moment that those big families and organizations tried to make sure that this group of people did not succeed. But still, they had to give up the moment that they realized that by the time that they were taking action, this group had actually grown stronger that it could compete against them. In order to deal with them, the other organizations and families needed to band together. But since these organizations and families could not trust each other, they did not form an alliance. At the end of the day, each family or organization only wanted to benefit itself. So, due to different interests with the same common goal, although all of them wanted to form an alliance, they did not do it in the end. But of course, the information that Jack possessed currently was not enough. He had to know about the power levels of the members of that group. So, without hesitation, he decided to go to the Storm family. He was going there to do a trade. He was going to give them something, and in return, they had to give him the information that he wanted. So, before that, Jack decided to do a few trades, to get something of great value that would be able to gain the most attention from the Storm family. Sylvia was seated on a couch inside the main family mansion of the Storm family. At this moment, the expression on her face was completely serious, devoid of any emotion that was present during the time that she was communicating with either Jack and his group or her nephew, Miguel. Seated opposite her was a man with blonde hair that was currently combed backwards, with sharp purple eyes, currently wearing a stern expression on his face as he looked at Sylvia. I have been asking you about something. I know about the ability crystal bead. For you to be able to gain an ability, that means that you used the ability crystal bead. But it is not that easy for you to be able to process the ability crystal bead. First of all, it needs a person who possesses a special ability that matches with the one that you currently possess. It has to be in the same category, although it is not a must for it to be in the same subcategory. Then, there is the procedure that is required for the processing of the ability crystal bead into a serum that is then injected into the body of a person. The man whose name was Wade, Alicia's father, stated as he looked at Sylvia with squinted eyes. Sylvia remained silent as she listened as Wade spoke. There was no any shift in her expression at all, considering that she had expected that this brother of hers was definitely going to possess information about something like this. In any case, it was not as if she was trying to hide anything from him. Even in our family, it is not that easy to be able to process an ability crystal bead. That is something that needs a lot of attention, and the person that is going to conduct the process is someone who is an expert in that field. In case anything goes wrong, not only would the ability crystal bead be wasted, but even if the serum is processed, it might end up harming the person who is going to be injected with it. And right now, I want information about how you were able to have the ability crystal bead awakened and processed before it was injected into your system. I don't really care about where you found the ability crystal bead. All that I care about is your safety. I have to know if the person that awakened the ability crystal bead is not a person with some kind of intentions, or the one that processed it was skilled enough. Right now, it looks that everything is okay, but we don't know if there is going to be any complications in the near future. So, I have to make sure that all precautions are taken. Wade continued. Sylvia remained silent as she looked at her brother. Of course, she understood that this brother of her, although he was not showing any emotion on his face, he actually cared about her. But still, it was just this too much of overprotectiveness or his that denied her a lot of freedom. That was the reason why she had to talk with her aunt in order to be able to gain a chance of getting out of the stronghold, to go out and prove herself that she was capable of doing something without having him interrupting her or doing it for her. But in the end, although she had succeeded in what she had gone out to do, it had only created another trouble for her, where her brother wanted to know the information about who it was that was in charge of the creation of the serum that was injected into her system. But there was something that Sylvia did not want to do, and that was to reveal much information about Jack. At the end of the day, if even just a small piece of information about Jack was revealed, then a lot of commotion was definitely going to ensue in the stronghold domain. Sylvia took a deep breath. Although she was going to respond, she was definitely not going to give all the information that her brother was asking for. But just after she had opened her mouth and was about to speak, there was someone who entered the room. It was none other than Ruth, Wade's wife, and Sylvia's sister-in-law. "There's someone here that wants to see you," Ruth stated as she looked at Wade. Wade raised his brows as he looked at Ruth. He was a little surprised to considering that most of the time, in case there was anybody that came over and had an issue that needed to be handled, she was the one that usually did so. But now, it seemed that whoever it was that had come over did not come to the Storm family, but instead, they came for him personally. Otherwise, how was it possible that Ruth would come over and inform him of something like that someone was here to look for him? "Who is it?" Wade asked. Sylvia also looked at Ruth. wondering who it was that was here to see her brother. It was so rare for people to come and look for her brother, considering that he was not a person that really much focused on the management of the family. Instead, Wade was a person that mainly dealt with the combat power of the family. Currently, although he was not the strongest within the family, but still, he was not weak as well. He could be considered as a formidable force within the family, only second in the family. There is a young man here who claims to be called Jack. He says that he has a business deal that you will be interested in. Ruth shrugged her shoulders as she responded. The moment that she mentioned the name Jack, Sylvia was surprised. At the same time, she could not help but wonder if it was the same Jack whom she had come together with to the stronghold that was coming over to the Storm family. Although she was surprised, she managed to maintain her composure. But nevertheless, her brother Wade had already noticed the shift that she was having. Nonetheless, he did not say anything about it for now. Ask him to come over. I'm quite curious about the reason why he wants to trade with me, instead of you who is actually in charge of something like that. Wade responded. Ruth nodded her head in response. Immediately after that, she turned around and left the room. As for Wade, he turned around and looked at Sylvia with a calm expression on his face as he asked, "Do you perhaps know anything about the person that is coming over?" "I only heard the name. I don't even know who this person is, so how can I tell if I do know him or not?" Sylvia responded with a helpless expression on her face. Wade was about to ask something when suddenly, another person entered into the room. It was none other than Alicia. She looked at her father with a disgruntled expression on her face and said, "Father, I need to talk to you about something." Wade looked at his daughter with squinted eyes. Then, he said, "Can you not see that I'm talking to your aunt? You will have to come back later on because I'm currently busy." "But Dad, this matter is urgent." Alicia was unwilling to give up. So, she continued insisting, hoping that her father was going to agree to speak to her. Wade wanted to refuse, but Sylvia spoke up for Alicia. "Just talk to the child. It seems that what she has in mind is kind of urgent that needs to be taken care of as soon as possible. As for me, we can discuss about what we were talking about later on." Wade frowned. He could tell that Sylvia was also trying to dodge the topic that he was asking. But still, he decided to give in for now, considering that even if he decided to talk with Sylvia, there was somebody else that was coming in to see him. So, the conversation was going to be postponed for a moment until he completed the issue concerning the person called Jack. "Okay, go ahead. What is it that you want to talk about? If it is something long, it will have to wait because there's something else that I need to do not long from now," Wade stated as he looked at Alicia. Alicia went ahead and sat next to Sylvia. Then, she took a deep breath before she finally began speaking. "Father, I don't want to get married to that guy called David. I don't like him at all. Even if I have to get married to a person that I don't love, that David is definitely not the one that I would like to be married to." Wade let out a sigh. He had expected that Alicia was going to be against the matter of arranged marriages, and he himself was actually against something like this as well. But, this was something that was completely unavoidable. Even the marriage between him and Ruth was something that was arranged, and was not something that the two of them had planned from the very start. That was how it has always been, marriages for benefits of the family. And right now, although he wanted to give his daughter all that she asked for, there was one thing that he could not give her, and that was the freedom to select her partner for marriage, unless the partner that she was going to select was someone that was qualified enough to be married in their family. "You know that that is not something that I can decide on, right? This is something that was decided by your grandfather. Although it seems that your mother is the one that is controlling everything, but still, you have to understand that your grandfather is the real decision maker of the family until he decides to give up the full power of the family," Wade stated helplessly. "But I already found another person who is capable of marrying me. I'm pretty sure that even if grandfather doesn't want a person who doesn't have a background, as long as he sees the person that I want to get married to, he would definitely agree," Alicia stated stubbornly. The person that she was referring to was of course Jack. Until now, she had not managed to get out of the stronghold. Still, she had been trying as much as she could, again as much information as she could about Jack. But no matter how many times she tried, she was not capable of gaining any information about Jack. It was as if Jack had disappeared from the normal world. The moment that she realized that Jack was no longer in the normal world, she thought that perhaps he had come into the stronghold domain. So, she thought that this was a good chance that she could use. If she managed to convince her father so that he could cooperate with her mother, he was sure that they would be able to convince her grandfather so that they would begin looking for information about Jack actively. But from the looks of it, it was definitely going to be difficult to be able to convince her father. She knew him all too well. He was a person that once he made a decision, he would hardly change it. I'm quite curious about this person that you are talking about. But from the looks of it, this conversation is going to be quite long. So, why don't we talk about it after I am done with another issue that I'm about to handle right now? Looking at his daughter's expression, Wade decided not to talk about the matter right now. So, he decided to shift the topic, so that he could put that matter aside for now. After handling all the issues that he was having at hand, he was going to discuss this issue together with his wife, so that they could see how they were going to handle the matter of Alicia's marriage. Alicia was just about to say something when she heard footsteps approaching. Curiously, she looked over, wondering who it was that was coming over. But, the moment that she saw who it was, her eyes could not help but widen in surprise. Out of reflex, she stood up on her feet. The movements made by Alicia startled Sylvia, who was also forced to look towards the direction of the entrance into the living room. And when she looked over, she was also surprised. Although she had been expecting that it might be him, the probability of him coming here was actually so low. Additionally, he did not come over to look for her, but instead, he came here to look for her brother. Looking at the reaction of the two people, Wade could not help but frown a little bit. This was definitely the first time that he was seeing such an expression on his daughter's face. At the same time, looking at Sylvia, he could immediately tell that she knew who this person who had come over was. With curiosity, Wade looked at the young man who was following behind Ruth. This young man possessed unique silver hair, with blue eyes that shone with a bright light that indicated the confidence that he possessed. Other than that, he had an athletic body, and although he was currently wearing clothes, he could still see the outline of his muscles in some areas. And other than that, the appearance of this young man was definitely top-notch. As he walked over, he was confident in each step that he took. He did not seem to have come to a place that belonged to a big force in the entire stronghold, but instead, it was as if he had just walked into an ordinary shop. As for his eyes, they did not move around, looking at the expensive items or advanced technological products that were present in the room. But instead, he was simply focusing on Wade.